We're going to focus on analysis of running records. We touched briefly on it a few weeks ago, but we really didn't delve very deeply into it. And now you've had some experience with running records and recording some of them and scoring some of them. So I'd like to look at that this week. And then also thinking about strategies that kids use. And the reason why we're going into that, and we're still going to focus in on guided reading with some slides from preventing misguided reading for your readings this week. But this will be the first week that I ask you to listen to a child read within your clinical classroom. And if you'll think about what I said earlier last week, make sure this is a child that you have somewhat of a relationship with. This isn't the first time you've spoken to this child to then say, "Hey, come read to me." Um, that there's some kind of even a beginning relationship there, because reading, especially for an emergent reader or a growing reader, can be a really vulnerable practice, especially when you tell them that you're going to be listening to their reading and taking a record of what they do. Um, that can also have kids freeze up a bit. So you want to make sure that you explain to them, this is just for my class, and I'm going to share it with you, and I'm going to see what great strategies you're using as a reader and share those with you to help you know what's going on in your brain. So usually if you put it that way, kids are a little bit more open to you listening to them read when you're not their classroom teacher. But yeah, I want you to do that. I won't be collecting your running records this week. I'm not going to be asking you to submit them or to share them. But the discussion board post this week is around your experience within it. So whether it was your first time taking a running record or your 1,000th time, probably in my case, like 10,000th time, every time I learn something new. So your discussion board post this week is around that. So to kind of prepare you for that, we are going to revisit um, strategies, processing systems, just a little bit, because I feel like we touched on it briefly, but we really didn't dive into it deeply, and for a reason. I wanted us to get through a good bit of the weeks before we came back into it. I'm in the Clemson website again. We're not going to play this, which you're welcome to listen to it later. But what I want you to do is I want you to be meta for a moment for me. Be kind of metacognitive about yourself as a reader if you were back in school and you were learning how to read. Most of us don't really remember what that feels like or what we did, or we're not very aware of it. So this is going to kind of bring you back to that. So you're going to read the sentence in the blue box below, and then you're going to think about what you did to solve this sentence about reading. Okay, so I'm going to show it to you. Okay, so I'm going to give you a minute to read this sentence to yourself. Jot down somewhere what you believe the sentence is. And then at the same time, try to think about what you're doing to solve this sentence. All right. So let's take a peek at what the sentence is. All right, trying to make sure we can get there. Oh gosh, messed it up there. Sorry, y'all. There it is. Okay, so it's kind of hard for you to see with where this cut off. I'm gonna see if I can pull down our screen a bit. There we go. Letters are not the only clues for reading words. Letters are not the only clues for reading words was the sentence. And yeah, I admit, like, I had a little bit of a one up on y'all because I've taken this training before. So it's like I knew um, what it was going to be. But the first time that I did this, I really was astounded at what I used to be able to do this, to be able to read. So I want us to look at of what could be some of the things that you utilized. Um, More than likely, you used some print. There were letter symbols that were still there. A lot of people usually get the first word pretty easily, letters, because of the letter symbols and the sounds of English that were there. Um, then after that, you probably used your knowledge of the functional words of English, knowing where a verb would typically go, that a verb would typically follow, a noun. You're not actually thinking, oh, that must be a verb that follows a noun, but your brain knows the structure of English and knows that the word are, after word letters would kind of make sense. And then what would be some other three-letter words that could be strung together to make sense? Um, you also think about what we said at the very beginning of it. I said this sentence about reading. So, right there, I set the stage with meaning. I set the stage by saying, this is going to be about reading. So, you had that context within your brain of, okay, well, this isn't about dogs or mailing letters. This isn't about that. So really interesting to think about how our brain distinguishes between sources of information and then integrate those sources of information as well. So I want us to look at this from Marie Claire. And I want us to think about what it's like. How does it relate to what we tried to do when we were solving that sentence? No reader is likely to render all text accurately without some problem solving, and therefore every reader has to be able to operate a system of checks and balances. That's that integrated system. So did we focused on the sound system, or do we focus on the ways in which we put words together, or do we focus on the meaningfulness of language? We want to do all of those layers as we read. And usually when we read, we have more than one option for checking whether we're right or not. So thinking back to our MS and V, which are our three information systems, meaning, structure, and visual. And we went over this a few weeks ago. Visual are the letters and sounds we see, of what we look at. Meaning is the knowledge and information we have in our brains from our experiences of the world, what makes sense. And structure is the language, the syntax, what we know sounds right to our English ear. All those information systems are crucial in what strategies kiddos are using. So if we're thinking about a child who's using meaning, if the sentence said, can you ride a horse? And they said, can you ride a pony? It definitely makes sense. The child is definitely using meaning. It makes sense in the sentence and the story. Um, Thinking about visual kiddos, they're looking at the same sentence or a similar sentence. We looked at the horse and they're saying liked. We liked at the horse. Um, that child is using visual cues. The visual information system refers to looking at print, though, not pictures. Remember, pictures are more for meaning. Um, Visual is more the letters, the print, and they're using that to help them get some information. And then the last one, and looks like we are, oops, structure. Thinking about, does it sound right? So if the sentence says there are two horses, and we say there are two horse, that is a child who is trying to use structure, knowing that horse is something that that could make sense in a way with the way that we're thinking about language, with the way that English sound. Um, they're not quite using the language structure to make the sentence sound right. They're almost there though, and typically it's a lot of meaning on its own, and then visual and structure tend to go together. So some nice practice. Let's look at these four examples. Which information system is the child using when they make the error, even though the word is wrong? This is our first piece of analysis. So if a child says, and here's the book page, we can paint. If they say we can pet, what is that child using information system wise? If you said that they're using visual and structure, you're correct, because they are definitely looking at the print, the text, and seeing a word that starts with a P and a T, and that is visual information. And structurally, it sounds right. We can pet, sure, but the meaning isn't quite there yet. How about we can brush? If they said that for this sentence, what are they using there? If you they're using meaning and some structure, you're correct. Because if we're thinking about, again, looking at the sentence, they are not using visual information. They chose a word that looks nothing like paint. But meaning wise, if we're looking at the picture, we can brush would make sense. And structurally, it sounds right in the English language. How about I can paint? What information system is a child using there? If you said meaning and structure, you're correct. It makes sense to say I can paint. It sounds right in the English language structurally to say I can paint. And then how about if they said we candy paint? What are they using there? And if you said just visual, you're right. They see that CAN and they say candy. But we candy paint makes no sense. And we candy paint does not sound right structurally in the English language. So that's a visual information system. So this process, what we just did, is what you're going to be doing as you analyze reading records, running records. You're going to look at each error and you're going to think, what is the child using? Not what are they not using, what are they using? Because the more that we can see what they're using, the more we can see what kind of a reader they are. And then we're going to think about, okay, so what are they missing? How can I help fill in that gap? All right, so for this week's work, one thing I'm asking you to do, and I've already linked it within your module, is in the instructional decision-making piece of Clemson, you're going to be analyzing running records. You're going to be doing what you just did with me, except you're going to be using the running record practice that they utilized with you last week. So you're going to be filling in this error column and every once in a while the self-correction column as well. And again, it's just like what we just did, and Clemson does a great job walking you through that. All right. Anything else about this week? We worked about strategies. You're going to be analyzing running records with Clemson, and you're going to be taking an analysis or a running record of a child for maybe the first time, maybe not. As always, I'm here if you need anything as far as questions, and I will talk to y'all soon.